I'm Saija. My guest is Gunnar today. You want to say hi, Gunnar?
Hi.
I'm going to quickly fix his microphone, and then we're going to get on to our project, which is folk art printed patches. This is going to be a really fun one today.
Wait, where's the volume on our phone? That's my mom's phone. The volume is, I don't know what the volume.
All right, there we are. The volume's down.
Good. Because I don't like that echo.
I know, that echo is just not too much fun. At least we didn't get like that really nasty screechy feedback. That's never fun.
The echo is still it's really quiet now, but
yeah.
I can barely hear it.
You're gonna have it a little bit. We're learning our way through technology and streaming here at the museum.
I've known technology for a while.
Okay, everyone. So our project today is folk art printed patches. And so before we get to it, folk art, just to give you a short definition, is generally art that is not necessarily created by trained artists. It is art by the people for the people, and often folk art can tell us about the culture that the person who made the art lived in. You won't see super refined art techniques. Maybe perspective is off if something is drawn 3D. And it's kind of got this, I don't know, folk art often has a very sort of cozy and fun and like whimsical feel to it. And so we're kind of channeling that with our patches, and I feel like folk art ties nicely into the DIY, short for do-it-yourself, ethos that comes with patch making. This is a particular project that is very dear to my heart. It's kind of got a little punk rock vibe, you know. A lot of do-it-yourself in punk culture was, you instead of going and buying patches, maybe you just take a Sharpie and a piece of fabric and you write your favorite band's logo on it, or you write the political or cultural statement you want to make on it, and you slap it on a piece of clothing, and there you go. Like, you're using that medium of homemade fabric patches to sort of like communicate to the world. And that's something I really love. So we are gonna hop to it. So our supplies that we're gonna have today are fabric printing ink. Now, this is specific ink for fabric. And after you've made your patches, you're going to want to let your patch sit for an entire week before you put it on anything or before you wash it. Because fabric ink is specifically made to be able to survive washing. However, I'll tell you a little tip at the end about how to make this stuff last longer. If you don't have this kind of ink, I do really recommend picking some up if this is something you think you're going to really enjoy doing. But if you want to make your first experimental patch with acrylic paint, that is something you can do. You're going to need some kind of non-stick surface. We're using a ceramic tile. You can get these really cheap at any hardware or home improvement store in various sizes. If you wanted to use them as a coaster, you could. But these are the kind of things you'd use for a bathroom tile.
Yeah.
So that's going to be to spread our ink on. You're going to need a piece of fabric, of course. You're going to need what's called a brayer. These kind of fun rolly things. You can get these.
Which they can also be called rollers.
You can call them rollers. The official name is brayer, but they are also rollers, and I think really either word works. These are available at most art supply stores. They are made of rubber. Unlike paint, the difference between this and paint rollers, Gunnar, is that paint rollers are usually fabric around the roll so that they can spread the paint. I think you've seen a roller for painting your house, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of soft, but the difference with these is that they're rubber. So they're made for kind of squeegeeing ink. So that's kind of the difference between those. If you don't have a brayer, what you can use instead is a jar that is circular, just round with no kind of indents and bumps on it. Just a smooth round jar works all right. The other items you're going to need are a piece of foam, styrofoam, and a piece of paper to draw on. So I have started my design already. In keeping with the theme of folk art, I decided to do a deer skull because red deer, and we see a lot of deer around here. And if you've been around the forest, you can always just like find bones around and antlers that have shed. And I just love that. It's like finding treasure. And also flowers. Flowers pretty prominent in folk art because, you know, like everywhere you go, you're going to find different flowers. And of course, pencil and eraser. So obviously you're going to want to start by drawing your design. I myself and Gunnar have already drawn our designs. Gunnar, do you want to hold up your wonderful drawing to show our audience here? He's got the letter G, G for Gunnar. And I'm actually really glad that you did a letter because for our viewers who don't know, if you are going to be printing anything that has words on it, you'll notice that Gunnar's G is backwards. And if you're going to be printing letters, you need to draw your words or letters backwards because when you print it, you're going to get a mirror image. So glad you did that.
Yay.
All right. What you're is take your pencil, and now there are, ooh, we've frozen. Oh. Okay, I think we're, computer's going a little slow, but we'll be all right. So assuming that you have drawn your design already, you have placed it on top of your styrofoam. What you're going to want to do is take your pencil, and there are two ways that you can transfer your image onto your styrofoam. One of the ways that is a little quicker is holding your pencil at an angle and just very gently sort of almost cutting into your plate. So again, I'm not pressing straight down when I do that method. I'm holding it at an angle, and it is going to cut your paper. You're not keeping these drawings, so do them on sheet paper. So I'm pressing into my block at an angle.
Me too.
Getting that G printed, hey bud? The other method that you can use to transfer your image is by the dot method, which is a little more, can be a little more precise. It's a little slower, but if you really don't want to mess up a line, it's a good way to do. So you're just going to hold your pencil up and down and poke, 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 poke. You're going to poke holes around your outline. If you've ever carved a pumpkin using those pumpkin carving kits that come with stencils from, you know, like Safeway or the grocery store, it's kind of similar to how you would mark out your design when carving a pumpkin, because with a pumpkin, you can't really do that sort of like side press.
I'm going over the lines a little bit, but I'm lucky because I'm not pushing as hard when I go over the lines.
Yep, you don't have to push super hard, just hard enough that you can feel the styrofoam sort of buckling under the pressure of your pencil. Now you want to go slow and steady. It might look to our viewers as though I'm going fairly fast. That's because I do this a lot. If you don't do a lot of printing with this method, I highly recommend just taking your time. So a little fun fact as I'm carving out my design, give you a little printmaker knowledge. Normally the material that you would use for something like this is linoleum or rubber blocks. You can, of course, scavenge linoleum from job sites or from construction stores. Or you can get professional rubber carving blocks from your local art store. And to do a professional block print, which is the style of print that we're creating today, usually you would get these little knives that sort of have a V shape at the end. And what you do is you press in and carve little strips of the rubber or linoleum out to reveal your image. However, what I like about using styrofoam, especially for beginner printmakers, or if you're working with very young people who you maybe don't want handling sharp objects, is it's a very good introductory way to get a feel for the printing process without spending particularly much money on materials. It's sort of just a fun, like, quick and dirty way to just get your hands right into the printmaking experience without spending a bunch on it. Or even if you want to just test an idea for a lino cut, this is still a good way to just sort of pilot your design and then maybe see, oh, well, you know, I have, you know, too much blank space here. I need to update the design. It's kind of a good way to just make a preliminary version of your print.
My hand get into
It does take a little muscle. You got to muscle in a bit. How far along are you in your design? You getting close to done?
I finished my G.
Yeah, you've just kind of got your little designs around the edge, hey?
Yeah, just my little designs around the edge finished now.
If your hand starts getting stiff, feel free to just wiggle, 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 wiggle. Get some of that stress out in between the lines that you're drawing, because we are going to need to do a little more pressing, just a heads up. However, I do think it'll be a little easier once you're done pressing through the paper. I find getting that initial push through the paper is the toughest part. So Gunner's working on finishing that part of his. I am going to peel my paper off. And it's a little hard to see through the camera, but I have now got this design pressed into my foam. And so things to keep in mind when you're we're going to be going and scratching back into this, but things to keep in mind is that wherever you have pressed down is going to be your negative space. And what that means is that that is not going to capture ink. It's going to be the part that is the color of your fabric. So everything that you can see pressed downwards in my lines is going to be red on my design. And everything that is still raised, that's going to capture the ink and that's going to transfer it. So especially if you used the dot method, you can kind of see that here I did with these leaves. If you use the dot method, you're going to want to go back over your design. And you don't want your pencil to be super sharp for this part, by the way. And even if you didn't use the dot method, it is still a good idea to go over your lines again, just to smooth them out and deepen them. But especially if you use the dot method, you're going to want to straighten out your lines with a pencil. So I'm going to carve in and do that now.
Almost finished my little outside pieces.
Oh, you're moving along at a great pace, dude.
I got like one left.
This is definitely the kind of project that it's a little time consuming, but that can be nice with art sometimes when you want to just kind of lose yourself in it, you know, just take your time.
I'm going to see what I've done.
One thing to keep in mind is if you, oh, hey, that's looking fabulous. You want to show the camera?
It's going to be a little hard to see because I didn't push down super hard.
But you can still see the grooves you got there. Yeah, it shows up. Looking good, dude.
Now what to do? I forget what to do next.
Now you want to just take your pencil, and also another thing is if your pencil is too sharp, feel free to blunt it down by just scribbling on a piece of paper a little bit, because I'm finding my pencil is a little sharp. I just need to blunt it a tad.
Push down the lines again?
Yep, push down, go over your lines, and also any place that you want to create a bigger gap, you're going to want to sort of color it in, so to speak. As you can see with the eyes of my little dear friend here, I am cutting away a bigger chunk. Oh, we have a comment saying, "Good job, Gunner."
Thanks to whoever sent that.
You are doing a good job. So we're going over our lines, making sure everything is nice and pressed down.
Done my G.
Done your G. I'm making sure that I go over the little pieces of grass that I drew because those didn't cut out very sharply. So just taking my time, making sure those lines are nice and crispy.
I hope mine looks really nice after it's done.
Oh, I know it's going to.
If it didn't, dude, it would be a lot of work for nothing.
Well, it's never for nothing because it's always a learning process.
I've done a lot of work for nothing sometimes.
You know what? I always say it's never for nothing because if you learned something, you can always do it better next time.
Yeah, but sometimes I do something and it just gets trapped.
It can still be disappointing, to be totally fair. All right, so the next thing that I personally want to do with my piece, and just to give you, a little more insight into this process, is I sort of want to eliminate this area in the background. So I'm eventually going to be cutting around my design. But if you're using a pencil that doesn't have an eraser on the back of it, if you're trying to push down a larger space, you can use that blunt end of your pencil. And so that's what I'm going to do around my main design because I actually want a little more red in my patch.
Well, I'm still just digging my extra stuff around the outside of my G.
That's just fine. I chose a much more complicated design than you did. I'm feeling a little bit like I got a bit in over my head, but we're also...
Yeah, you definitely got a little bit in over your head.
I'm used to making really complicated designs and doing lino cuts, so I was like,
yeah. My first time, so I just chose to do something super easy.
And that's really good, It's always really good to start fairly simple, Don't overdo it. You got to get a feel for it before you jump into the tough stuff.
Yep.
So I'm pressing down around my flowers, and I don't need to press all the way because I can also cut out around my design, which is what I'm gonna do. But I'm pressing everything down outside of my plants. So yeah, focusing on negative and positive space is a very large part of printmaking.
So now do I do ones that now that I deepened it?
Ooh, give me just a moment and we'll get to the fun part, which is throwing down ink. Because that is the next step.
Yay! I can splurt ink down on my tile.
Put ink on the tile.
Yay. Then I get to put some ink in that.
Roll, roll, roll. Yep.
Roll, pull.
Okay, so I've got, for our audience who are being wonderfully patient, maybe working along with us, I don't know. We have our background pressed down. I want to cut around it so that my plate is not just square. Also, the thing that is helpful with cutting around your design, if you're wanting to have a blank background.
Edges on mine I can cut out.
Yeah, yours uses the space differently, which is perfectly fine.
And I know that's perfectly fine. Mine uses the space
Mm-hmm. Everyone's art is gonna look different.
I think some parts of my G's are a little bit thinner than I want them to be.
That's okay. This is always a good practice plate, and you can always make another.
Yeah, you can always make another.
Something that someone in art school told me that really stuck with me is when you're stressing about making things perfect, just tell yourself this isn't the last piece of art that you're ever going to make. And I think that's a good motivator. Okay, you ready for the fun part?
Yes.
All right, let's do this.
Cranking the lid.
Okay, so when we're putting our ink on our plate, we actually do not need to go crazy with it. Gunnar, do you want to watch how much I put on mine? I'm going to take my tile. I'm using white ink. Mr. Gunnar over there is using some green. I'm actually just going to put a very small little blob like that. Do you see how much I've got on there? Just a little. Because our designs are... Yeah. Because our designs are quite small, so we're really not going to need a whole lot of ink. Oh no, is it a little clogged? Do you need some help?
Got it.
Got it? All right. Just a little blob. Perfect. Think of it like squeezing out toothpaste.
I know how to squeeze out toothpaste on my toothbrush.
There we go. I would hope most people do.
Yeah,
all right.
It would be sad if you didn't.
All right. Next, we're going to grab one of our brayers. And you want to get your fabric at the ready.
Ready fabric.
Ready your fabric. And we're going to press our brayer in. And we're going to roll it back and forth. And we kind of want to, you'll see that I am approaching it at different angles. And I'm trying to make sure that I get it all over.
I am doing that. And rolly, 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 all over town.
Gunnar, you have come up with our official inking song.
Yeah.
Ink your brayer for as long as it takes to sing Gunnar's ink braying song.
Yeah.
Okay, brayer's inked. And now we're going to put them on our printing plate. We're just going to roll that right across our design.
Roll. Gonna grab more ink.
Yep, you can always go back to your plate and grab more ink if you're...
And I think my ink's starting to... I think I didn't put quite enough on.
I am actually feeling the same way, but
I'm going to add a little more.
add a tiny bit more. I think that's a good idea. It's always good to not waste this stuff, right? But if you need a little more, you can always take more. And that's why we only start with just a small amount. Because it's easier to add more to our brayers than it is to try to put it back in the jar.
Yeah, it's horribly hard to get stuff back.
You can always take more. You can't always take less.
Easy to get out of the jar.
All right, so after that, I'm going to take my fabric. I'm going to take my block. And I'm going to press my block onto the fabric. I'm going to use my clean brayer to press my ink in, and I'm going to hold it in place a little bit. Now, again, this part, if you don't have a brayer, you can use a jar to get your ink onto your plate, and you can either use a clean jar.
So push it down on my fabric?
Yep, push it down on your fabric and use your clean brayer to push the ink in, to work it in there. And so if you're at home, again, you don't always have to have a separate clean brayer. What you can also do is grab the back of a spoon and press into the spoon with your thumb, and that'll work too.
Rolly, rolly.
Oh, it left a bit of a ghost print on the paper there. That's kind of neat. But now, moment of truth. I'm going to pull my patch off of the print block. Oh, so exciting. This is my favorite part every time.
Can I pull off mine?
You sure can.
I got a little ink on my hand. That's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Moment of truth. And
oh, you got a ghost print.
yeah.
Do you want
to put enough ink on?
Well, that's okay. That's part of the learning process. And I've got another piece of fabric for you if you want to try again.
Or I could flip it over. But I'll use the other piece.
Yeah, try putting some more on.
I'll put more ink on this time.
Yes.
I'm
I'm going to cut the broadcast in a couple of minutes here. I will show the audience your finished plate if you're done by the time I'm finished here.
Yeah, I'll probably be done in about 3 minutes.
You'll be pretty quick here. So
No, it's pretty quick.
this is what I ended up with, and it's definitely not perfect, but you know what? That's perfectly okay. Sometimes prints end up a little bit choppy, and like I was saying earlier, you can always use cheap materials and just make another one. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So if you've pressed nice and hard, you'll have these very clear lines. You'll have a good distribution of ink. Just for fun, though, you can see.
Really good to get ink on it.
Yeah, get lots of that ink there.
Really good ink
You
on
can
it.
see what happened here. It looks a little bit like what's going to happen if you don't put enough ink on, is you're going to get something called a ghost print, and it'll be kind of faded. And those can look interesting as well. So that has been folk art printed patches. I'm going to show you what we're working on next week before we go. Our other educator, Crystal, is going to be doing this absolutely fabulous charcoal eraser drawing with everyone. Hold it up so you can see. Really looking forward to this project. She's going to do a great job explaining it, and you're going to get some beautiful results from this. Gunner's just going.
I'm just out of this. I'm just blasting out of this phone.
All right. Do you want to say bye, Gunner?
Bye.
He's just in
I'm
that
still working
project.
on it.
Okay, so as always, you can find this broadcast on the Red Deer Museum and Gallery's website, www.reddeermuseum.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And of course, don't forget to join us next week at 11 once again for our next project.
Meet my mom.
With Gunner's mom. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good week.